Whoa! Episode 3, just like that.
Why did that feel so fake? Episode 3. I'm stoked to sit here with you. I am super tired today. As you guys have heard me complaining all morning about you and Dan, my brain is off, but I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
I am believing the Holy Spirit is going to speak through our conversation and do what I cannot do in my own might today. Lindy left this morning. We're very sad.
So sad.
That. She's headed back to LA.
Yep.
To do the thing.
That was a refreshing time. So good. You look beautiful today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're good looking too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll keep you.
I dressed myself today.
You did, but
I decided today was the day for leather pants.
It's always a day for leather pants.
And,
it could be 98 degrees, and I think it's a day for
leather
leather
pants. What are your pants?
They're patent leather.
Patent
leather. A little
leather.
Victoria Beckham action.
Hey, shout out. Where did you get those?
I found them on Vestiaire Collective a few years ago, and they were like brand new, tags attached, and I was like...
Yeah. Well, for those who are not watching, they're very shiny. And
I'm sure you can probably see that through the camera. I mean, they are like, I will touch them, and if I put on lotion, it's like a full-on handprint. Yeah. Okay, what are we talking about today? Okay, wait, can I say it? I'm excited.
Yes.
We are talking all things creativity today.
All things. Everything to ever be said about creativity will be smashed into 30 minutes or less.
We're probably going to do 2 episodes because Dan, who's amazing and doing the filming that we've told you about, which, by the way, I'm going to do a quick shout out because you need to follow him on Insta if you're not, and he's really talented. It's at DanBRV. And you can also buy some of his prints because he's an amazing photographer and videographer.
Yes.
All the freaking things. We have his art on our wall.
Yeah, our first piece of artwork.
In this place.
And only piece of artwork, which is a huge compliment.
It is.
It's like there's no other great artwork out there besides this one. So.
And it's really good.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I had to shout him out. He didn't know I was doing that, but.
Yeah, art and creativity. You are an iconic artist in my perspective, but that's just me.
Get married, guys, and then just have him like gas you up.
No. Okay, you have a 13-year track record.
Yeah.
And
of doing things.
When I first met you, something I really enjoyed and something I also kind of wrestled with a bit was that you challenged me as an artist. I'm an art director, senior graphic designer, been doing it since MySpace days. Hello. And
have MySpace days ever actually ended though?
I wonder where Tom is right now.
I was about to say,
do you remember
where is Tom?
Do you remember his photo of him in front of a whiteboard and he's looking over his shoulder smiling?
Yeah, Tom was cute.
Yeah.
We love Tom.
I heard he sold, I love that we're talking about this, but I heard that he sold MySpace and he just travels and posts the most iconic photos.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he just travels now.
Well, I need to find his Instagram handle and follow Tom.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's already iconic.
Yeah.
What?
So you've worked in the fashion industry for 13 years. You've lived in multiple cities. New York. You were there for 6 years.
Yeah.
London, LA, bi-coastal between LA and New York.
Yeah.
Am I missing anywhere else? We're in Paris now.
Yeah, we're in Paris now. That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just traveled around for different clients when I lived in each of those places. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was a moment that you're like, wow, I'm getting paid for my imagination?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that I ever really looked at it that way. I think for me, I love what I do. I always have. And I start off as a stylist, and I thought that would be the only thing I ever do.
Yeah.
And I remember I just worked so hard. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't have connections in the industry. I made them, and I worked incredibly hard. And I think a lot of people do that, or a lot of people used to do that. In today's day and age, people think they can call themselves a stylist and creative director with no experience because they worked in retail, and I have feelings about that.
Yeah.
It gets me fired up. I'm like, you don't actually have the skills to do what you're saying you're doing, and then messes have to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
And
I think that was influenced largely when Instagram started rolling out the like what you do under your, you could like describe yourself as an artist or describe yourself. I was a chef.
You
for
were
a long time.
restaurant.
I was
you were
a restaurant.
French restaurant.
No, Polish. Wait, was it Polish
It was
or
a French restaurant.
Because of my last name.
And I remember you didn't tell me you did that. And we were dating. And all of a sudden I was like trying to send something to you. And it's like, Grant Beaudry, French restaurant. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I was so impressed by that.
Something's always cooking.
Something about that lit me up.
Yeah. If we had a French restaurant.
No, we wouldn't. I don't have the patience for that.
Okay.
The Lord is still teaching me that fruit of the Spirit.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We both know that about me.
Was there a moment where you were just like, this is wild. I'm literally getting paid for my imagination?
I think for me, the moment was more like, this is wild. I can't believe that I get to do this or that I have like some of the clients that I do. Mm-hmm. Because I remember I was very much like a list person. I made a list and said, in 5 years, these are the clients that I want to have. Mm-hmm. And I was working really hard. And I remember by year 2, when I was booking with Esquire and GQ, mm-hmm. they were what I thought in my head was 5 years down the road. And it was like 2 years in. Wow. And I was so honored and so humbled by that. And also I think that for me was the moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real life. I'm doing this thing. And also when they come back, when a client comes back, you're like, this is the greatest thing, because I love working with creative teams and I love meeting new artists, and I feel very at home around people that may be deemed weird in like the Midwest or the South or something like that. Like I love people that are different, know how to express themselves. People that may have felt like a black sheep growing up. I felt like a black sheep growing up. And I remember I really struggled to go back with identity. I really struggled with like my identity and like creativity. And so I try to fit in this box or fit into that box. And then I was like, gosh, God made me this way. And so to be doing what you do and then have that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, this is real life. I'm doing what I love just by owning gifts that God gave me and working hard, and now I'm shooting for these clients was really freaking cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, wait, what about you? Well, did you have a moment where you're like, wait, I'm living the thing?
I think maybe like recently, because I worked at an agency doing design for, I worked that job faithfully for 5 years.
Yeah.
It was in the heart of Hollywood. We had an office on Wilshire Boulevard. And our clients were like Netflix and Hulu, Peacock, you name it, a lot of TV, streaming, theatrical. But I think honestly, since I went freelance and we started working with, I'm not going to name drop, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like Brandon Lake and Jonas Brothers and Bethel. I was like, this is so personal to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I love like all the bigger brands that I've done in agency days, but like there's a different type of ownership when you're freelance. Yeah. You know? There's. And I think when that ownership mindset kicks in and you are accountable, you know, it's a different type of leveling up, you know? Yeah. And I think the agency years had really conditioned me. I think agency was almost like a boot camp. Yeah. You know, not only for design, but also for life, because you're rubbing shoulders with people you would never typically like, you know, run into typically. So
gotta learn how to keep that calendar.
So I think like recently in like the past year and a half or so, it's been really sweet to have some personal projects that get me giddy, you know? Yeah. But yeah, we wanted to talk about creativity today because, yes, we are in the church space, but we're also artists, and we have a huge heart for artists. We have a huge heart for creatives. Yeah. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, which is known to be a very creative city, until I moved to Paris. And I was like, Los Angeles is not very creative at all. They're just very influenced. Yes. Yes. And
although there are amazing creatives there.
To
be clear.
Yes, there's awesome things that come out of Los Angeles, but it's a different type of energy or pace.
Yeah, for sure.
In Europe. And I also sometimes feel like a very small fish in a very large pond here. And I feel like there's decades and centuries worth of history just stacking up on top of me where I feel overwhelmed in the best way. Yeah. There's nothing better than diving into like different museums here, walking past like old, you know, monumental spaces, and you're just like Gosh.
I remember I dragged you to Centre Pompidou a couple weeks ago, which is like this amazing contemporary art museum here. Yeah. And it was super fun because I'm like, I don't think I've been to a contemporary museum with you. And I remember my first experience with one when I was like, you know, in New York and then London. And they're things that kind of, depending on how you create, really help you step out of your comfort zone or your box. And I'm like, I gravitate more towards history in the way that I create.
Right.
And so every time I go to like a museum like that, honestly, I'm like, oh gosh, my brain needs to like expand.
Yeah.
So it's super fun going there with you and watching you kind of like.
It was bizarre.
In the best.
You've helped me value history so much more being here. I remember on our honeymoon, you know, it's basic, whatever. It's not. The Louvre was insane. It's such an iconic place, but gosh, dang it, dude. That was my third eye was opened. Okay. It was like a new age experience. Okay. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
It was wild though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that we've
just kind of
way too much time talking about ourselves,
our love for it
and our love for it. Yeah.
Why? My question to you, and we can chat about this for a little bit, is why do you have a heart for artists? Why do you have a heart for creatives? What did you experience that developed a value for people who happen to be creative and crush it in their field?
Oof.
What do you think creatives need? Put it that way.
Loaded questions. I probably won't remember all three of those, so you might have to pop in and ask me the other two. Start with the beginning. I think, one, the Lord made me this way. It's really that simple, right? Like, I think God uniquely crafts each one of us with giftings and skill sets and passions. And growing up, I just knew that I was different. I didn't understand what that meant. And I went to a private school. We had uniforms. And I remember out of uniform days, I was just so excited to dress up. And I remember one year I was at the mall with my mom. And I still remember this jumpsuit because it was iconic. I wish I had it, honestly.
Describe it. Okay,
so this was a black and white full-on jumpsuit, had a belt buckle, like a giant thick belt, and honestly, it'd be so in even today. It was so epic. And I remember it was $88, and at the time it was a lot, and it was around Easter time, and I begged my mom. Like, I was like, please, I have to have this instead of my Easter outfit. And I mean, my mom is great and creative, but she wouldn't automatically just like shell out, like, you know, 88 just for something because I want it.
How old are you at this point?
I think I was 12.
Yeah,
I was like 12. And I just wanted to wear that to the next out of uniform day. And my mom was so sweet. And she got me that jumpsuit. Yeah. And I wore it to my next out of uniform day. And everybody made fun of me. And I was bullied so bad for it. I never put it on again because it was different than I grew up in Oklahoma. It was different from the way people dressed. It was different from the way people there expressed themselves. Everyone there was in like more J. Crew aesthetic, like, you know, little khaki pants, little skirts, little tops. And I just didn't get it. I always thought everyone looked the same. And I was like, why does everyone dress like that? Maybe I'm supposed to do that. But I knew that I would get lost in my books. Like, I love to read and literature. And my dad was a lawyer and he lived all over the world. And so I grew up hearing these stories, and my mom's from the Caribbean. And so I grew up very ingrained in like, I think, the beauty of this world in a very real way. And I just loved it. It wasn't, I think, honestly, until I moved to New York where I was like, gosh, no, this is a beautiful and unique thing. And I don't want to be anything other than who I'm crafted to be. And so I'm going to own all of that, because every day that you're not only are you cheating yourself, but you're cheating the world of the gifts that you've been given. And I really believe that, like, our gifts are used to serve the Lord. It's that simple. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you are creative, then that is because God has made you creative. Yeah. And so own that. Yeah. And so I've always just kind of been in that mindset, I think, since then, which was probably since 2011, where I was like, I don't care what anyone thinks of my work. I really don't. Like, I don't care if you love it or if you hate it. At least you have an opinion on it. Have an opinion. Like, don't just like something because it's beautiful. I've created beautiful work. I've also created work where people genuinely were like, something's dark inside of her. And those were in seasons of pain and heartache. And I remember I watched Clockwork Orange once, and I was like, I have to have leather straitjacket sleeves. And you know the story. Like, I went to this designer I love working with. His name's Logan Neitzel. He's incredibly, incredibly talented. He does all of Macklemore's tour outfits. And I went to him and I was like, I have this idea. And he made these incredible leather straitjacket sleeves for me. And I used them for a shoot for Le Facial. And it was this like really magical moment. And it was right after my grandfather had passed away. And I love that as an artist, I can go back through all of my work and I can see the seasons of life I was in. I can see that flowing, even the client work too. You're like, gosh, like that came out of me because you pour out all that you are every time you do a project. It is your entire insides. Do you feel that way about like creativity? Like, do you have a moment in your life where you just looked back and you were like, you know what? Like, this is what I have to keep doing. You have the moment, obviously, where you're like, gosh, this is amazing that I get to do this. But what about the moment where you're like, I won't quit. I won't stop, even when it gets tough or difficult?
I think of music a lot because I grew up as a drummer, which is so hilarious because my dad's a musician. He puts drumsticks in my hands when I was 4 years old. By the time I was 5, I had my first drum kit, and we grew up playing talent shows. And my kindergarten talent show, we did a Kiss song, Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. My dad was Gene Simmons, so he did like the Gene Simmons Kiss makeup.
Yes.
And I was Peter Criss, their drummer, with the Peter Criss makeup and a little bandana and sticker tattoos.
Iconic.
And so every year we did the talent show. So I just grew up like in that 70s, 80s, 90s like music with primarily my dad's influence. And in high school, you know, I was more in the emo, you know, territory. It's going to age me so much saying this, but like, you know, MySpace.
Warped Tour.
Yeah, Warped Tour was Christmas for me every year.
Yeah.
I went to Warped Tour literally every year from 2007 to 2015, the very last one.
Well, and then you got signed in high school and toured all over.
Yeah, so my band got signed in high school. We started touring all over the States. We got signed by Attack Attack.
Okay.
Which is
I can't.
So
it's
funny.
So iconic.
I don't listen to his stuff anymore, but
if you're into like...
If you're into the hardcore scene, you'll definitely know Attack Attack because they were like so influential and they kind of created a new genre, which...
You could go down.
I could go down forever. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that my relationship to music is interesting. And to answer your question, was there a moment where I was just like, I have to keep doing this? I think there's many, many moments where I've tried to stop. And then a month or two will go by. And I'm like, something's off.
Yeah.
You start getting weird.
Yeah, you do, because it's in you. I do too.
I have to have an expression, and it lives inside of me like this stoked flame that's always burning, and I try to like put a lid over it like a candle. Yeah. And it stuff gets just really weird and like tricky. So actually one of my favorite gifts that I've ever received was a gift you gave me last year, is this little OP1 synth where you can basically import your own sounds and manipulate it. And a lot of artists that we love, like Bon Iver and Novo Amor and Hale Laker, a lot of these guys love this device. It's so powerful. And so that's kind of been my new expression of music. And I've tried to stop so many times. And it's just a part of my DNA. It's, again, the way God created me. And I love with, I was reading this thing from Nathan Finocchio a couple of years ago, and I've screenshotted it because he always goes off on his stories, and it's just genius.
I love it.
We love Nate so much. But like he was talking about like the Psalms where David's writing, oftentimes is worship is a return of glory back to God. And we don't have to talk a ton about worship culture, but it's just ironic that God has given us these gifts, and you can either hog it, suffocate it, use it for your own glory, or you can use it as a medium to help people heal and for you to minister to God and to bless his name.
That's so good.
Which is interesting. And so he's, it's just that basic quote, worship is a return of glory back to God.
I love that.
And
everything that we do is worship. I think a lot of people just think about worship. Sorry if you guys are hearing my pants.
Your pants.
But everything we do is worship, right? We're worshiping something.
Yeah.
Right? Like even if it's the world, you're worshiping the world if you're choosing that. And so I'm like, gosh, if we're going to give something our all and we're going to say we're doing this for the Lord and we're using our creativity for him, then give it all that you have. Be the best that you can be and understand, like in your humility, that the only reason you have those gifts is because the beautiful, like God decided to create you with them. Yeah. So give it back to him. I love that.
Yeah. Like David used to minister to the king, and it would literally put his soul at rest.
Yeah.
It would silence the darkness, So I mean,
that's how I feel.
Creativity in every format is a form of worship, and that's not just true for people of faith. Whatever you think about the most is oftentimes the thing that you worship.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
I think a lot of it can be abused and a lot of it could be absolutely incredible and contextual, So yeah. Anyways, but I was thinking a bit more about creativity and what inspires us and stuff. What would you say are some things that are inspiring you lately?
Ooh, gosh, I love this freaking city.
Yeah.
Listen, who doesn't say that Paris inspires them? I don't know anyone who's like come to Paris who's an artist who hasn't felt that it inspires them.
Yeah.
But I think in this season of life, this has been a really traumatic season for us. And like, that we've talked about that a little bit. And I think normally I am innately inspired by everything around me. Does that make sense? Like I'm like, oh, the buildings, the people, all the things. And I have felt so empty that in a lot of ways in this season, I'm like, Lord, revive my creativity that feels quite dead right now. Lord, surprise me in the ways in which you do that. So I think right now I'm actually finding it through people.
That's awesome.
I'm finding myself like slowly healing through community and through watching how community interacts with each other here. I love how familial based people are. And there's something beautiful and fascinating in the human psyche. You know that about me. I find it really interesting. And so I think right now it's just watching the way people interact. And it may seem so simple, but it's not. I mean, there are things so it's just like, I'm like rambling. I have 30 thoughts in my head at the same time. But even watching the way someone's hand movements are when they're talking to someone, or watching the way someone interacts with a cab driver when they're angry. Like we had a man the other day, we had two French people just shouting in the street. I was like, obviously I'm nosy. I'm a Trinidadian's daughter. And I'm like, let me see what's going on. So I like ran out the window and was like looking, and it's like this man sticking his head into this cab driver's car, and they're just like shouting at each other and pointing things. And I actually find
so
that
French
stuff beautiful and fascinating in the way that we interact with people, the way we interact with the world. And so that's been creating some really interesting concept ideas for me for this next season of things that we're building specifically.
I would say the same thing.
Really?
I love, outside of like mannerisms, people interaction stuff, like you were talking about Paris, like it's just been such a fresh breath of air.
Architecture.
There's so many galleries here. There's so many like monuments and museums, and just the whole city itself is so freaking old. Like everything is fresh. Yeah. I grew up in LA literally my entire life, and I remember when we flew back from Europe last year, I was just like, gosh, everything here is so ugly. Yeah. It's so ugly. Yeah. And we come here and it's just like, dude, glorious design. And it's pretty interesting, the relationship between, historical and modern.
Yeah.
you know, chew out the meat, spit out, chew the meat, spit out the bones with each. But
that's the thing I would really encourage people to do, though. If you're an artist, you need to get out of your context.
Yes.
That is like the one piece of advice I would give anyone. Like if you live in a small town, if you live in a big city, it does not matter. Your art will only be as good as you are willing to be curious.
Awesome.
Curiosity grows everything.
Yeah.
It will grow whatever is budding inside of you. Like whatever seeds you have planted, whatever seeds the Lord has already planted in you for creativity.
Yeah.
In order to water that, you can't always water it the same way, because what you will produce will always be the same.
Yeah.
And I remember when I moved to London, I went to Central St. Martin's, and at the point that I went, I had already been working in the industry for like 6 years. And I remember I was like wild for my industry in New York. Like I was considered a little edgier. My clients liked that about me. And I went to CSM, and I remember the first project I did, I put it up, and I was torn to shreds. And I mean, ripped apart. Like my course director literally was like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
With using some choice language up in there.
Yeah.
And I was so stunned and humbled. And I left with a full-on identity crisis. I was like, what am I doing? Why has anyone ever paid me to do anything? I'm terrible at my craft. And I remember I actually had to be completely torn down and rebuilt in my creativity, because I didn't realize that even my expanse was actually just still within a box. And that's what he told me. He was like, you think you're creative, but for here, you're not creative. He was like, maybe for where you were. And he's like, but I see the box you're in. And I felt so offended by that. Yeah. And I am so grateful for that now.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm so grateful when I look at like work that I create, I'm like, ugh, it's not good enough. Yeah. Because it feels comfortable to me. So
that's great. Okay, that's a good segue. I want to talk a little bit before we end about the topic of originality.
Yeah.
How do you avoid predictability when creating something? I think there's so many creatives.
Yeah, lose your mind.
Lose your mind, go through trauma, and become an influencer and travel the world. I'm kidding. I think there's so many creatives out there who genuinely struggle with approaching creativity through the lens of what's the template, what's to be expected, what's been done, how do I fit into this entity that's already been established? How do you find your thumbprint as a creative? Yeah,
you choose not to do that. It's really that simple. I remember earlier on in my career in New York, I had certain clients that they were like, they booked me for commercial work. Yeah. And they're like, hey, if you want more commercial work, your whole book needs to look commercial. I loved and did a lot of high fashion editorial work. I toured with artists and musicians, and I'm not one thing. I'm all of the things. So the first few years, I kept trying to make my book look like everyone wanted it to be. It was either too commercial, or it was too dark, or it was too this, too that. And then finally, I was like, I am all of these things. And just because I can do all the things doesn't mean I should try to act like I can do one of the things.
Great.
So book me or don't book me.
Yeah.
This is who I am. Yeah. And I started expressing that and showing that on my website and showing that to clients. And it did put a little bust on my work for a little while, because people didn't get it until they did.
Yeah.
And
that's the best type of art. Some of the art you just, I don't get it. Yeah. When I listen to Bon Iver, when I listen to McGee, when I listen to Dijon, I'm just like,
I love Dijon.
I don't get it, and I love it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about God.
Yeah, exactly.
I can know him accurately, but I can't figure him out exhaustively.
Yeah.
Art does that.
It does.
I can see this accurately, but I don't understand it exhaustively, and I think that's why I'm attracted to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you just have to be willing to do what's different. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable.
That's vulnerable, though. So how do you become comfortable being the first one on the scene to do something different?
I think first you have to be comfortable in yourself.
Amen. Yeah.
I think otherwise you're going to always try to fit yourself into a category or create the way someone thinks you should.
Yeah.
I think once you get to that point of genuinely being like, I'm creating from here, that's enough. Sometimes that's enough, because then you're not living for the validations of others. Like, I can genuinely say, as I've gotten older, I honestly do not care, and you know this, what people think about me. I just don't. because I know who God created me to be. I know my intent. I know my character. And all of those things can be misconstrued. They usually are by most people. And that is just part of humanity. We live making assumptions about people that we know in part, that we don't know in whole. And art is no different. You see a part of me when I create.
Oh, wow.
But there is a whole of me. And all of my life experiences, my trauma, the beauties, the joy, all of those things are in here too. And so as I'm creating, you're seeing parts of these things, but I'm giving all that I have in that season, whatever that season looks like. So be at peace with you. And it's easier said than done. It took me years to get there. And even now, like I have moments where I'm like, ugh, but is it? And I'm like, gosh, you know what? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it does not matter. Are you true to who God has created you to be? Not are you true to who the world is telling you should be? And your art, all the art stems from that, in my opinion.
Yeah. I find it very beautiful. So, beautifully said. I also find it very beautiful that for those of us who are people of faith, it's interesting how the dots start to connect.
Yeah.
You know, where you have these attributes that you start following this trail to, because you start asking, well, why do I have so much mission around this thing I'm passionate about? Why do I feel a need to share this with other people? Why do I care about this so much? Why do I spend so much time fixating about things like this, you know? And I think it's just such a beautiful reflection of the image of who we were made in the image of.
Yeah.
You know, when you look in the mirror, can you see Christ formed in you? Can you see the attributes and the values of God? It blesses him.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm really excited to continue this conversation.
Me too.
We might do a part 2.
No, we're definitely doing a part 2. Dan actually had an amazing idea this morning that we should do, because I am fired up about creativity in the church, fired up about creativity in real life. And he's like, you guys should do a 2-parter, like the creativity in church in one and this one. So that's going to be next, because he's a genius and
it's awesome.
It's a great idea. And I could just ramble about this stuff.
I think it's important. Our friend Jordan Holt says that art helps people see.
Yeah.
You know, artists help people see. And I think that's just such a beautiful
Can I use this moment to do a little plug?
Sure.
I'm not asking, actually. I'm going to use this moment to do a little plug. Okay, so Jordan Holt and his wife, Tia Day, are incredible. And they just started a network for creative. This is probably better for next episode, but I don't care. I'm doing it now. But they're starting a network for creatives in tandem with Theos U. And they're about to launch, I think, or they're just launching right now.
It's an educational platform on how to reclaim beauty, truth, and originality back into the church space, which seemed like a lost art for many of people.
Yeah, so basically, if you're a creative and you wonder how you can be original, or you wonder, like, does this actually even matter? Or how does this even play in faith in these different spaces? Follow Novo Moto on Instagram, because they're coming, and we're so inspired by Jordan.
I may or may not have done the branding.
You did do the branding
for all that, and it's an awesome thing. It was really a dream thing, you know, theology, education, creativity, music. It's all encompassing, and I'm really exciid for them.
Okay.
So
we love it.
Until next time.
We're not high-fiving.
We're not high-fiving, but yeah, thank you so much just for opening up some time to do this. And I will see you for episode 4, Mrs.
4.
All right.
Mister.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.